And sometimes if you want to come to understand why there's such criminality and violence and why there's such social disorganization and so forth in the black community, it pays you not to study black people first. Because see, black people are not the only people who are violent. Black people are not the only people who were the majority in prison. Black people were not the only people who came from a peasant background and were taken into the urban centers of the world. Not by a long shot. Okay? Prisons were invented before we were even out of slavery. Yeah. The first prisons in the world in America were built right here before 45, 50 years before black people were even out of slavery. They were building prisons. And then it's interesting that when the whites were building prisons for themselves, they saw prisons as reformatories. And they carefully designed the prisons. You should get into the old prison literature and see how they tried to design the walls, the architecture, and everything was perfectly designed to try to rehabilitate these people and bring about their rehabilitation. You should go back and look at all of these parks. You look at Central Park. If you read the history of Central Park, Central Park was a social rehabilitation project. They determined what trees they would plant in terms of what effect they would have on people's minds. How they would plant them and how they would place them. And I'm talking about white folk, because white folk weren't there yet. You can't imagine the kind of planting. They tried to plan the cities and lay out the streets and build the whole thing in a way to shape the consciousness of people, you see. Because America was being inundated by immigrants and foreigners around the 1830s. And at this point, the urban areas were growing at an extremely rapid pace. Prior to that time, America was a rural nation. And at this point then, America began to become an urban nation. And the very urbanization began to threaten the integrity of the country. America did not know how to deal with these urban masses. And these were white masses. This isn't the first time the cities have been seen as an endangerment to the life of the nation. The first time they were seen as an endangerment to the nation were when the Irish and the Italians and the other ones were inhabiting these cities. And do you know how social work came into being? It came into being to deal with the orphans of white folk and the broken families of white folk. Do you know how the YMCA came into business? The YMCA came in to try to protect these country white boys when they came into the city, to try to maintain their value in the face of the city. Do you know how the Sunday schools came into being? You think they just came into being as a result of the church? There was a whole Sunday school movement in America as a way of trying to rehabilitate the wayward white youth in the cities of America. Do you know how juvenile courts came into being? They came into being to teach the Jewish delinquents and the Irish delinquents. That's how they came into being. Do you know that adolescence as a concept is an invented concept that was created to deal with the wayward youth of white America in the 1800s down to the turn of the century, right into the 1920s. Because these gangs, these white gangs, had control of Newark, New Jersey. These white gangs had control of Philadelphia. These white youth gangs had control of New Orleans. These white gangs was roaming across New York City in the thousands and tens of thousands. White girls were on the streets of New York City at 9 years old. Half of the Irish families were without fathers. Half of the children were just pushed out in the streets by their families, and their fathers abandoned the families. Since when did you identify these things with being black? Because you have not read American history, and you have not read the history at all. You're too willing to believe the worst about yourself. And you'll let other people tell you any damn thing because you won't go and learn. And I'll tell you now, it's not enough just to read black history. You've got to read the history of this nation. Okay? And how do our sportsmen and spokesmen sit in front of a white interviewer on TV and is pushed to explain the behavior of black folks? Explain your behavior. Why do you kill? Why do you murder? Why do you enslave? What am I here on the carpet for? It takes explain to me why there's so many fatherless children. Well, tell me, why were there so many fatherless children in New York City that were of the Irish extraction? Why were these girls at 9 years old loaded down with syphilis?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, talk about it. Let's deal with it.
Lay it on.
Why were these people out here with their outdoor toilets in the backyards, with the sewage flowing over, racked with disease, such that when they would move in the neighborhood, the whole neighborhood would move out. Even black folk would leave out the neighborhood.
That's right.
Why were these people overrun as they were brought into this country with disease, with tuberculosis, cholera, and all other kind of diseases that had disappeared from America? And therefore people knew that when they would come into the neighborhood, you had to get out, or else the whole neighborhood would be plagued. Why were these people living in apartments that were built for one family, and they cut the apartments up into smaller size and put several families in it? Why were mothers and fathers, I'm talking about white folk here,
There you go.
why were mothers and fathers and children all laying up in one bed, in one room? Why did they have little boys' hotels where they fed them pork and beans and let them sleep standing up in a halter for 12 cents a night? Huh? Why were there thousands and 10,000s of white women on the streets of New York prostituting and begging? Why were these girls out there attacking and stealing and doing it and cursing and doing all the other things that they were doing? You hadn't heard about that? Why do you see these old buildings with iron bars over the windows and so forth? Who were they protecting their contents from when black people weren't even in the city, huh? Look and come alive and see what was going on, ladies and gentlemen. This was what was going on in America. Why is it now today then, in an effort to save their youth, the whites then defined adolescence as a separate category from adulthood and gave it special characteristics and created a special court for these children? And nowadays, now that the black children are the ones that are the center and focus of criminality, they are redefining adolescence out of existence and saying now that they're going to treat 12 and 13-year-olds as adults. You must understand the politics of crime and understand the game that is being played here. You have to see that. How do you explain the fact that the word Irish and criminal was meant the same thing? Yeah, like today, black and criminal mean the same thing. You think this is new to you? Why then were the Irish overrepresented in the prison population of America, where the vast majority of prisoners were Irish in America? Huh? You didn't hear about that? Why did people get elected to political office running against the criminality of Irish people and running against the criminality of foreigners and strangers? So that you had the American Party, these so-called know-nothings, who elected several governors, who elected many congressmen, who took control of state legislatures running against the criminality of these folk. These Irish people weren't even seen as white people by other people. Why then did you have the shanty Irish and the lace curtain Irish? Why then did we talk about bourgeois blacks and the underclass blacks? Huh? In other words, you see, if you study that history stuff, you'll begin to see some principles operating here that have little or nothing to do with race, that are not intrinsically related to our Africanness or our blackness, but it's related to the political design of a system, related to the very criminal nature of a society that is designed to rob poor people of their dignity and to rob poor people of their wealth and to destroy poor people, such that it locks poor people up regardless of race, so that it locks outsiders up regardless of race, so that it locks people up who are seen as strange and foreign regardless of race, so that it attacks them as criminals and locks them up so that it can convince itself and those people that they are the greatest threat to the society and not the people who are locking them up.
Yes.
So that the focus can be on those who are being locked up, and crime can be defined in terms of the pictures you see on the TV show of those who are being locked up and handcuffed, and not the crime of the ruling classes who are impoverishing these people and destroying their very lives. So that we cannot focus on the reconstruction of this society and see our goal is merely the reconstruction of the criminal. and the rehabilitation of those families who are supposedly in trouble, and not the rehabilitation of these overfed white people and greedy pigs. So that we can see that the problem is one of increasing police power, of giving the police permission to execute black men on sight, and not to see the fact is that we need to reorient the power relationship between black and white folks in this nation and in this world, and reconstruct who has the power in this society. But as long as you see yourself as criminal, as long as you let the other people convince you that we are criminals, as long as we see the criminal as the poor boy on the street, we don't see the criminal as the ones in the suites. We don't see ourselves then, and we don't see the necessity of changing our economic circumstances and getting in control of our wealth. We don't see the necessity of bringing these white men to heel and changing the power relations and the economic relations in this world. We only want to focus on manhood training and only want to focus on trying to change the values of these kids. Focus on manhood training, but train them to be men enough to deal with white men. Train them to be men enough to change men. This is what we are talking about. I want you to study this Irish because they're very interesting. They were a conquered people in their own land. The British treated them like dogs. They were serfs to the British. The British man could beat them and kick them and dare them not, to hit back. They were not allowed to defend themselves against the British. That's the problem they still have there right today. And you're going to talk about, you think because you got out of slavery, the game is up. The Irish, and that game with the Irishmen and the British have been going on since the 1600s. And it's still going on right now. Yes, the British man could send for an Irish man's wife and sleep with her at will. He could send for his daughter and sleep with them at will. When the Irish were starving because of the potato drought, they weren't starving because of the absence of food. The Irish were growing more than potatoes. At the very time they were starving, they were shipping out all kinds of corn and cereal crops. They were shipping out beef and cattle. You hear what I said? Why? Because the British decided that they weren't going to give those cereals to the Irish, and they weren't going to feed them the meat and the milk and the stuff, because as one British lawyer said, we don't want to disturb the operations of the market. And they literally did destroy over 1 million of these people. The Irish population was half what it was in 1914 compared to what it was in the 1830s. They were literally being decimated. And you think you're going to arrive at some peaceful relationship with these dogs. You got another thought coming. But because you don't read history, you can fall into that kind of victimization. If we would just love one another, what are you talking about? We would just respect you. Come on. Read the history of these people and understand who you're dealing with. These people are not open to appeals about love and not seeing color. They are looking at that dollar. And that's the only thing that counts. And if it means that your life has got to be forfeited for them to get it, they're going to do it without thinking twice about it. They shipped these people after they were starving them to death. They wouldn't let them vote. They wouldn't let them be elected. They wouldn't let them practice law. They wouldn't let their children be educated. They couldn't even own property for a good while. They shipped them over here in ships, cargo ships. And they only had a space of 3 feet by 6. Yeah, you think we were the only one packed into these holes? They packed them into these holes and stinking filth. And there was only 3 inches between 3 feet between ships. They couldn't even hardly sit up straight. The women had to go and cross the sea literally sitting up all night and sitting up all night, because if they fell asleep in the wrong position, they were had. They had to sit there and fight off the rapists and so forth as they came over. This was what it was about. They had to live in attics. Some attics were not even 3 feet tall. They still had to pay rent for them. Live in depth cellars. Live in alleys and build houses in alleys. The garbage was more than knee high and ankle deep. The sewage was open trenches and flowing into the street. When we got to New York, things were a hell of a lot better than they were for the Irish, I'm telling you. Yeah. And why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this, and again, just because there's some very interesting parallels here. People who've been degraded, who were enslaved and degraded. Okay? And yet we look at where they are today. You see? Yes. And look at the power they exercise today. And the whole bit. It says that because you come in degraded situations or circumstances, the Irish man was a poor, dirty laborer and did all the dirty work of the society. And for a period of time, even the average living quality of life for black people was better than that for Irish people. In fact, the white boys would give the Irish men work to do that they wouldn't even give the black slave because they had an investment in the slave. Yes. They would have advertisements, Irish need not apply. Oh yes, Irish had the highest rates of insanity, the highest rates of alcoholism. Yes, yes, you heard of the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame? You think that's a play name? They were fighting people, man. They fought each other like cats and dogs. They chopped each other up and knifed each other and shot each other in ways you wouldn't believe that even our black youngsters have got to yet. These people used to have gang warfare that would last for a whole week. 7 and 8 days, I'm telling you. They had a riot that went on for 3 or 4 weeks. When they got to fight, they were firing cannons. I'm telling you. Yes. Why don't we hear this history? Because people want to believe that black folks, are the only people who behave in this way, and this is intrinsically related to blackness. And we got black spokesmen who want to throw this stuff back in these white boys' faces when they start trying to explain this. Why is this going on? And they run the story about 129th Street in Harlem, 3 series about black people as if this is representing some new phenomena in America. And this is representing something. These people, the Fighting Irish, they fought each other. You heard the word Donnybrook? Yeah, that's why. These people, they just get out there and just battle and fight, just knock each other up for no reason whatsoever. They used to wear handkerchiefs and colors in their pocket, black boys. You think you're doing something new? Colors? That's nothing new. They wore colors. They wore their hats backwards and to the side. You think you're just imitators out here. And not good ones at that. Because you know what they used to do? Attack cops on sight.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Cops wouldn't go in some of their neighborhoods. They would have to go 4 and 5 at a time. Now, they wouldn't come out alive. Okay? Are you kidding? You haven't seen this thing yet. Okay? Yes. Well over half the people arrested and put in jail were Irish. Where did the word paddy wagon come from?
Patty Moore.
Right. Whites, Irish called what? Paddies, and the police wagon was made for all of the men. Paddy wagons. We can go on and on here. But and the orphans, all of these, they were known as thriftless people. People who didn't know how to spend their money. And they were not ashamed to beg. Known for getting on welfare. Yes, 60% of the people in the poorhouse, Irish white folk. As they moved into Boston and other cities, the welfare rolls and the charity rolls more than doubled. Didn't hear of bathtubs. Didn't know what bathtubs were. You know? So what are we saying here then? But they got out of it. And there were other groups who had similar conditions. But I talked about them because they resemble a lot of ours. Yes. How did they get out of it? They got out of it by finding some kind of political, economic niche. By learning to control some lever of power. They took control, political control, of the cities. They took political control of the civil service. They didn't come in there, we're going to hire all people fairly. We, and be the height of the Dickens Fairness Brigade. They came in there knowing who they were going to hire. They were going to hire their own people. And they were going to get their own people in there. And they brought them in there until they got them out of poverty. And they brought them in there until they gained respect. And they gained respectability. And then the white, they said, okay, we think you're white enough to come on in. We'll make you one of us. You see, when these Spanish people get control of these cities, you are not going to be in part of it. You can believe that. I'm going to tell you that. You can talk people of color all you want to, because these other people understand the name of the game, and that is to get in so they can bring their own in with them. Okay. They want to talk to Negroes and make Negroes saints. And we're supposed to be examples to mankind. The poorest and the weakest and lowest people got to be an example to mankind. We're going to hire everybody. In fact, we try to prove how fair we are by hiring the other ones first. You see? Yeah. And one of the things that the Irish were noted for, and one of the other reasons why they were fighting Irish, because they'd attack everybody that wasn't Irish too. That's right. Because they had immense solidarity as a people. Immense identification one with the other. And they had been fighting these British so long, and they had learned how to deal in subversion and so forth, until they ultimately used the skills for their subversive activities against the British, and the skills that they learned in organizing their resistance to the British, they transported it to political skills that they used here in America to advance their interests, and even represented areas that weren't even Irish. They still had control of the areas. And what's the point here that I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen? We're even in a better